Kamakiriad is 8 songs that are loosely tied together. A kamakiri is a car I invented. It actually means praying mantis in Japanese, and I found it in a Japanese dictionary. Sounded like a good name for a car. And this car is a car of the future, say 10 years in the future, somewhere around the millennium or just after. And it's environmentally correct. That is to say, it's steam-driven. It's got a bionic farm in the back, and the most modern technology. The narrator takes delivery of this car in the first song of the album, which is called Trans-Island Skyway, and the rest of the songs are adventures that he has along the way in his journey, until the last song, in Tea House on the Tracks, he finally reaches his destination, and that's basically the framework of the album. Just before I started recording, I realized that I'd be much more comfortable with someone monitoring what I did in the control room. I realized I didn't want to keep running back and forth, between performing and playback. So, the obvious person to call was Walter. So I gave him a call, and he agreed to produce the album.
Producing a record is a different job every time out, and it depends on what the artist wants to do and what part of it they're not able to do by themselves. Some people that I've worked with are very self-sufficient, and I basically, try to confine my activities to ordering takeout food or inventing obstacles to be overcome, that kind of thing. And in Donald's case, particularly, there were, he knew what he had his songs and his track feel and the basic elements of his track pretty much together. The biggest challenge was to find the best way to integrate the live performance elements with the machine elements, and to be able to find ways to manipulate them so you could get them to really mesh together the way you wanted to.
After the Nightfly was done in '82, I ran into a kind of writing block, and I decided to take some other musical jobs. I did a film score and some production jobs, and it was basically a time when I sort of time for self-examination, really. And finally, towards the end of the '80s, I got the idea to do this album, which became Kamakiriad. The first single is going to be a tune called Tomorrow's Girls, which is kind of a grade C space opera in which the Earth is invaded by women from another planet. In this song, it's really a metaphor for when you're in a relationship and it starts to go bad, and you wake up one morning and the person you're living with seems to be an alien.
I ran into Donald at a restaurant on the Upper West Side of New York where I live, and I said, "Hey, hi, what's doing? When is the album coming out?" He said, "May the 25th, do you want an advance copy?" I said, "No, I've only been waiting 10 years for this album. I don't want an advance copy." So he sent me an advance copy, and I remembered from when Nightfly came out. I'm obviously a big fan. When I saw the New Frontier video, there was a guy in it that sort of, I could have played. So I called up Donald and said, "If you're doing a video, I would be more than glad to be a part of it. I'd be honored." So the next day they called with an airline ticket, and here I am. So it's really my pleasure, because I've been a fan of Donald and Walter's for a long, long time, and the album's great, and I really like the guys, and all I could do to help.
One thing about working in science fiction, it allows you to maintain a certain detachment from the material, especially if it's personal material. And it also, you get to invent technology that hasn't been invented yet, which is also useful for metaphors as well. I guess the difference between Kamakiriad and a Steely Dan album is simply that I wrote all the songs, except for a few exceptions in the with Snowbound, which Walter and I wrote around in the mid-'80s sometime together, and Florida Room, which was the lyrics were written by Libby Titus and myself.
Snowbound was written 1985 or 86, and then we actually didn't, the music was written at that point, and we had a few lyric ideas, and then we finished the lyrics basically over the phone. For a while, Donald and I were writing over the phone. We had headsets and everything, you know. We'd have these long, drawn-out, you know, expensive telephone calls. Donald had a Watts line in his house, and, you know, at the end of an hour and a half, we'd have a line or 2 lines or whatever. So we kind of just chipped away at it.
Snowbound, let's sleep in today. Wake me up when the wolves come out to play. Heat up these white nights. We're gonna turn this town into a city of lights.
The style I work in is not that distinguishable from the style people associate with Steely Dan. Walter and I both like the same kind of audio effects, and we both like very natural sound, very little reverb, and tight arrangements. We started recording in I think it was the spring of 1990. In New York, and then because Walter lives in Hawaii, I would spend 3 weeks there or a month in Hawaii at his home studio, and then we'd take a break and I'd write some more tunes or whatever, and then he would come to New York for 3 weeks or a month, and we'd continue, and this went on in a sort of erratic fashion.
The way my studio is configured here, you can see, as a result of an accident, the studio is basically in 2 buildings. So you can never really get that, you know, hyper-manic indoor thing going where you're just trapped in a building. Every once in a while you have to, it's unavoidable that you would pass through the natural world for a minute, and that has a great, gives you a sense of perspective.
Relax with some sound.
Walter and I have been thinking about going out in the summertime, doing a little touring with a new band, and that should be interesting. We haven't played since '74 live, really, or at least in a large venue. So it should be fun. Probably do some stuff from Kamakiriad and some tunes from Walter's album that he's working on now, and some of the old tunes, Steely Dan tunes, which will probably be rearranged for a live performance, which is something we always used to do when we used to play live. We used to play with the tunes a lot because I don't like to come out and just play the recorded versions so much, unless I can't think of anything else to do with them.
On a night like this, you look up at your lover. It's like you're in some old cartoon.
Well, I think in The Night Fly, the future is seen from a very naive viewpoint by an adolescent, really. And in Kamakiriad, you have someone who's matured a great deal, but in fact it still seems to be very optimistic and still naive in a way. And I think I think I'm generally an optimistic person because really there's no choice, is there?